Adventure Bike Shop, proud sponsors of Adventure Bike TV. Rubbish adverts.
Great at adventure.
Hello and welcome to Adventure Bike TV. Now, firstly and most importantly, some of you may notice that I haven't shaved since the last show. Now, Tom thinks it ages me 20 years. I don't agree, but answers on the back of a postage stamp or that Amanda comment to the website, please. Now it's on with the bike review, and we are completing a trio in orange.
The Metal Mule Max pannier is the only pannier to use a silicone seal to ensure they're watertight to IP66 classification. Metal Mule, engineered to be different. Proud sponsors of the bike reviews on Adventure Bike TV.
Back in February, I was out in Corsica and I was test riding KTM's 1290 Super Adventure S and the 1090 Adventure. But of course there was one missing from that little trio, which is the 1290 Super Adventure R. Now, I've got Andrew along with me today, he's been on the show before, and he's brought along his 1290. So we're going to do a little bit of a comparison with his bike and my old 1190, which everybody knows I absolutely love. And to start us off, I thought we'd do a little bit of top trumps and just compare these two bikes, because obviously mine's now 4 years old, this is a brand new model. So let's just start us off. Horsepower, what's your horsepower?
160.
Mine's 147, okay, you trumped me on that one. Torque, I don't know the figures off the top of my head, but I know torque's a lot better on yours. Weight.
It's a bit heavy.
Yeah, it's about 12, 13 kilos heavier, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's all the electronics. So in terms of electronics, yours has just got everything.
Cruise, quick shifter, Bluetooth, headset, music.
And it's got the traction control that's also linked to the lean angle, so it changes depending on where you're leaning, just like the S model did that I was testing.
Yeah.
But it's the electronics package that makes up a lot of the weight, because it's a very similar engine. The LCD screen. So it's the same as the S that I rode, but tell me what you think of the LCD screen.
The LCD screen, apart from the fact that every time you go under a tree it changes from night to day. In fact, there's a software update that's just come out to fix that. It's brilliant. It's amazing. It's clear, easy to read, easy to navigate. Yeah, it's a definite plus.
Yeah. So I mean, they are very, very different bikes. Yeah, the weight's a little bit different, the power's up, the electronics are massively different. Although actually in terms of kind of the wheelbase, the wheel size, the frames, actually very similar. So in terms of when you get on it, it feels similar, but tell me what you think about when you ride it.
Well, first thing, on the weight, you don't really notice the weight. I certainly didn't notice it when I had to pick it up earlier on. But yeah, no, to ride it, it rides very similar. I think it turns in easier, which is odd, because earlier on we looked at the lock, and I think the 1190 has a better lock, but it just seems to turn in quicker. So riding it is really nice to ride. It's definitely smoother. So they've definitely done something with the engine in terms of making it a much smoother delivery. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I haven't really taken it off-road, apart from messing about a bit today, so I can't really comment on that, but on the road it's great.
Right, so in order to do a proper review, obviously you've ridden your bike a lot, but I've got to ride it. Can I ride it? Is that right?
No. I've seen you drop an Africa Twin. I've seen you drop that bike. I've seen you drop a load of bikes.
If I promise I'm really careful with it, can I just have a little ride? It's nice weather, the roads are dry.
Okay, but don't drop it. I'm the only one who's allowed to drop it, as I've proved already.
Right,
let's go.
Okay. done quite a few miles on it so far, and there's a lot of debate that I've read about. Is it, bear in mind it's part of a trio, the replacement for the 1190? Is it the replacement for that bike?
So I think you're missing a bike out because it's actually part of a quartet and not a trio, because there's the 1090R, and that bike is a combination of two bikes. It's a combination of the 1190R and it's a combination of the Super Adventure. So if you think about it, it's got the engine of the Super Adventure. They've obviously done some things to it to make it more versatile for the 1290R, but it's essentially that engine, hence the weight. The chassis, they've taken the chassis off the 1190R and they've put that engine into it. But by doing that, I think you've got a compromise. And you know, what I loved about my 1190R, I think I still love about my 1190R. I've still got to get to a relationship with that bike, but it's not replacing what I had. It's a hybrid of the 1190R and the 1290.
Yeah.
And there's some compromise elements in there.
I think it's almost like they've taken the 1190R and split it into two bikes, a bigger bike and a smaller bike, neither of which is actually a direct replacement for it. Because the bigger bike, as you said, has some compromises in terms of the engine, but the 1090 is still 125 horsepower and it's a fair bit lighter than the 1190. So it's almost like they've taken that 1190 and turned it in. Yeah, they knew they had a great package, but can we make two even better bikes out of that one? That's kind of how it feels to me.
I think that's a really good sort of summary. I think that's exactly what they've done. I think they're appealing to the people. They wanted to give the people who wanted the bigger engine bike something they could take off-road, but then chucked in a load of nice things like cruise control, like a really fantastic TFT screen. They did some of the things around the quick shifter, which wasn't on the bike before, and that's improved it from a touring capability, but still giving it that off-road, go anywhere capability that the smaller bike has. But it is a compromise. If I was going to just go and do probably a long journey, I'd take the 1290R. If I was with a bit of off-road, I'd still take the 1290R. If I was going to go and do something a little bit more serious, I'd have to have a sit down and think about, is it as capable?
Yeah. So I think the price is an interesting thing with these bikes, because I had a look on eBay to see what a second 1190R would be, and I found one as low as 7.5, but that was 36,000 miles and all the way up in Perth. But I think if you're looking for a kind of reasonable mileage one, 9.5, 10 grand.
I think you'll pick up one for somewhere between 9.5. I think you get one less than 10 grand now.
But and you're knocking on the price of knocking on the door of the price of a 1090 there.
Yeah, and that's a real difficult one, right? Because would I take a used 1190R, or would I take what essentially I think is the next generation of that bike, the 1090R, brand new? And the answer probably is, I haven't ridden it yet, but I'd probably go 1090.
Yeah, I think I probably would as well. In theory, the bike should have exactly the same turning circle because their wheelbase is exactly the same. So after doing the turning circles, it certainly felt to me a bit like I was able to turn in a slightly tighter circle than Andrew was on the 1290. And actually when we had the bikes lined up next to each other and both handlebars on full lock, I got a bit more angle on my wheel, which would probably explain the reason why. And then Tom measured it, and there's a little bit more lock on mine. So early this morning, we were talking about whether it's a fair comparison to compare the 1290 and the 1190, and we've been out riding all day. So what do you think now?
So I think there's some parallels between the two for sure. I'm riding it just on that tiny little bit of off-road. You could see that it would, be great off-road. Clearly it is, and all the other reviews that have gone before have shown that. But I still think there is a difference, and that difference is they've taken two bikes, the 1190R and the Super Adventure, and created one bike, and as a result there's definitely some differences.
Yeah, and you can take kind of the other way, which I said earlier. It's like they've split the 1190 and beefed up one way and skinny down the other way to create the 1290 and the 1090. And I agree, I don't think it's necessarily a direct comparison because they've created two things that are different. So it's not quite apples with apples.
Yeah, I think you'd actually get a close comparison between the 1090R and the 1190R and the old 1190R. I think you'd find those two bikes are closer. But it'd be interesting because I think the 1090R is lighter. It's down on brake horsepower. I don't know what they've done with the torque, I haven't looked at the figures, so I think you'd get a much closer comparison. Yeah. But you might find it's, the subtle changes they've made are actually enough to negate the reduction in power.
I think what's interesting for me now is you've just got such a wide range of choice of the big adventure bikes with the KTM set of 3 or 4 now. So you just have such a choice, and they all have quite unique differences. I guess it's a bit of a silly question to say, would you have one of these in your garage, because you already do. But for me, would I have one? I don't think it's quite different enough for me to say I would jump out there and immediately want to replace my 1190.
One secure cam lock secures both the lid and the pannier to the bike. Metal Mule, engineered to be different. Proud sponsors of the bike reviews on Adventure Bike TV.
Now, try as we might, we cannot find out any information about when the KTM 800 Adventure is coming out, although the rumour mill is going absolutely crazy about it. Now it's time for film school, and Tom's going to be talking about using action cameras, and he's not going to be talking about just having them on your crash helmet.
Hello and welcome to this month's Film School. Today we're going to be looking at action cameras just like the GoPro. Now I might use the term GoPro quite a lot, but when I'm talking about it, I'm talking about it in a very general view. I'm talking about action cameras as a whole, whether you're using the Sonys or the Garmins or the Drifts, anything like that. They all should have similar functionalities. It's just in this day and age, GoPros are like Hoovers. A vacuum cleaner is often called a Hoover. An action camera is often called a GoPro. Now the first thing you want to do when you get any kind of action camera is really learn it, understand what it does, because most of them will do far more than you realise. Take this GoPro Hero 4 Silver. This is our workhorse of a action camera that we use on the show, and it does loads of things. It doesn't just film and it doesn't just take photos, it also does a lot more. For example, if we're talking about video, we can do things like time-lapse video. Here is a time-lapse video I've done just out of the window here at work, and you can see that it creates a really nice effect that can be used brilliantly within your film. Here's a few examples of where time-lapse on a GoPro has been used to make some really spectacular footage. So if we go through any menu on any action camera, you'll see lots of different settings. One of the key ones is frames per second. Now, depending on what settings you have, your video quality will depend on what type of frames per second is available to you. For instance, on this GoPro, it will film right up to 4K. However, it only will film 4K at 12 frames per second. Now, most video goes out at 25 frames a second. This is what standard cinema quality is. Now, if you use less than that, the footage no longer looks particularly smooth, and you'll then have more problems when you want to do things like a pan in edit. However, if you drop the quality slightly to 2.7K, it will film quite happily at 25 frames a second, which means it's great for everything we do, and we can play about with it later in the edit. Now, there are lots of other frames per second that you can get on there depending on your quality, right up to 120 frames per second. Now, just to explain frames per second, we said that 25 frames per second is what you normally see. Some people are using 50 and 60 frames a second now to make their footage seem smoother, but 25 frames a second is pretty much the industry standard and what everyone's happy to go for. So the other benefit of using a higher frames per second is you can slow the footage down. So just by looking in the settings, we've already found that we can do time-lapse, which is basically fast forwarding, and we can do slow motion. Another setting you might see in your menu of your action camera is looping. Looping is actually a great little tool. How many times do you record and record and record? Nothing really happens on the road, and then you turn it off and then suddenly something really interesting happens. A bull runs out in front of the road and you miss it. Now, what looping does is it simply has the camera constantly recording, and very much like modern day dash cameras, it will record a loop, sometimes 30 seconds, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes. There's a whole range of settings. But basically what it means is it's constantly recording. Then if something interesting does happen, like something darts out in front of you, or your friend does some sort of amazing wheelie, or anything really, you press the button and it goes, whoop, this is interesting that you've wanted to record, although it's happened backwards. So actually it records backwards. It loops back to a start point 5, 10, 15, whatever you set it to, minutes beforehand, and will record. So you have all of that footage there. You'll also see in the settings things like night mode. Now, GoPros and any action cameras aren't particularly great in low light conditions. This is just simply because they've got such a small lens. The night mode does help. It can make your footage look a bit grainy, but it's better than nothing, and it's well worth trying out and experimenting with and seeing what you can get. So once you've learnt the basics of what your GoPro can do, you've got to think about where you position it. It bewilders me why people don't use GoPros more effectively. There is so much you can do with a GoPro. They go underwater for a start. You can use a range of accessories, most of which come with it, to put it in different positions, different places. When we do bike reviews, we try and get it in as many places as we can on the bike using a kind of combination of clamps that we have, sucker pads, stickers, anything that we can to get it in interesting positions so that we can do shots, well, shots like this. So that was a range of footage that we've done, including some where we put the GoPro Hero 4 on a gimbal and put that gimbal on the end of a big stick, and then we lean out the window of the car and we can move it around and it looks pretty cool. So what are the GoPro's limitations? Well, we've already talked about its very small lens size and the way it struggles in low light. But the other real limitation it has is sound. When GoPros come, most people tend to use them in their plastic protective cases. However, they block out sound like really badly. Tell you what, let's give you an example. Okay, so this is the sound through my camera using this microphone. And this is the sound through my GoPro with its plastic case on. And I am specifically talking much louder than I have been in the hope that you'll hear it, but I'm not convinced. So the other thing you'll notice from this view is that the wide angle lens means that my set no longer looks as impressive. You can quite clearly see it's a set because the wide angle lenses take it in so much more. So welcome to the set. There are two ways to improve your sound. The first is really, really simple. Literally just take the GoPro out of its plastic case. Now this won't always be possible when you want to protect it and things like that, but it works. Check this out. So already a massive improvement in sound, hopefully. It's still not great, nowhere near as good as the kind of microphone that I'm using, but it's definitely better than nothing. Of course, the other thing you've got to bear in mind is if it's out of its case and you're going along, there's a huge amount of wind noise and things sound like this. Is it done? The other thing you'll notice about the GoPro is how easy it picks up other sound that goes on around it, specifically when things touch it. Let me give you a little example. Let me come over here, and all I'm going to do is ever so slightly move this back and forth, and as it's sliding you're getting quite a lot of noise on there. Then of course just the littlest taps that normally would feel like nothing are quite big noises on the GoPro. So the best solution with sound is not to use GoPro sound at all. Try and use something like a mobile phone with a microphone plugged in to record all your sound. Just remember to do a clap because that will help you sync the sound with your video later on. So GoPros and other action cameras are all fantastic. They really are, and they mean that you've got this incredibly versatile way of making films. And don't let me put you off them in any way. They are fantastic, and if it's the only camera you can get, you can use it and you can make some great films. For some examples, I got an email from a guy called Dave Harrison the other day who has made this great little film about his trip. He's done it almost as a guide. It's all filmed on GoPro, but he's taken the time to kind of learn what his GoPro can do, how best to interview himself and other people, and honestly, it's not the most spectacular thing in the world, but it's simple and it's good. And what he hasn't done is he hasn't overcomplicated it by trying to do loads of different things with the GoPro that he hasn't tried before and don't turn out right. And actually he's gone, let's make it as simple as possible and make it work. And it does. So excellent work, Dave. The link for that will be below. You can have a look at that. Also, you've got the classic Reese Laurie, who's gone around the world, uses a lot of selfie stick. It's a very younger generation of filming and filmmaking and look of a film, but it works great. I think like 95% of it's filmed on a GoPro. Yeah, check him out. Again, link below. He's amazing. But in my humble opinion, the godfather of making films with just GoPros or action cameras is the guy from the YouTube channel Broken Tooth. Watch his films, links below, all filmed with GoPros, thinks about it, tells a great story. He thinks about where he wants to place his GoPro to tell the best story. He doesn't spend too long on one shot or another. It's the whole package. It's fantastic. Definitely check him out as well. Those three links are in the description below, so check those out. So next to a few questions. So this number plate here, EDX736Y. That is the number plate from the Honda CD200 Bentley that I drove down through Africa to Gambia for my first ever film, which was Scooters and Sahara. And that's there to remind me of that. So I had an email from someone, and off the top of my head I can't remember who, I'm very sorry, asking me what kind of YouTube channels I like, and I asked whether he meant kind of biking ones, and he said no, any. So yeah, YouTube channels I like watching. I love Broken Tooth because it's good stories. There aren't particularly channels that I tend to subscribe to in terms of biking things. I just like to kind of search and find these little kind of stories. Hopefully, you know, the lower the view number, the more exciting I find it, because it means I'm seeing something not many other people have, and I enjoy that feeling. Outside of motorcycling, I'm a big space geek, NASA and Apollo and things like that. So I watch a channel called Vintage Space, which is actually there. A lovely lady called Amy presents a show all about kind of the history of space travel in the early kind of 60s, 70s, the Apollo era, and I think that's a great channel, personally. one of my favourite channels. I love Tested, which is what Adam Savage did after Mythbusters, DIY channels, things like that. There's a whole range. I don't know, too many to mention really. But that's the beauty of YouTube. Anyone can put up videos, you can find things that you've never seen before, and it opens up the world of video to anyone and everyone. Yeah, so just if you find any channels you really like, please let me know and we'll see if we can share them and get them a bit better known. Okay, that's it from Film School this month. If you have any questions, please send them in. And that's it, really. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, just for once, something serious on Adventure Bike TV, and I don't think it could have passed anybody by the news about Touratech in Germany and its insolvency in the past few weeks. Now, on a very personal level, I've always had a very strong relationship with Touratech in the UK, and Adventure Bike TV, we think they are a great global brand. What we want to do is just lay out, as best we can, the facts as they have evolved over the last few weeks. Touratech is known throughout the world, and let's be honest, it goes hand in hand with the adventure motorcycle market, whether you love them or hate them. Now, many think Touratech shot to fame overnight when Ewan and Charlie used their kit on their TV series. Well, this definitely helped to establish the brand in the UK, but Touratech was already well on the way to being the biggest adventure motorcycle accessory manufacturer in the world. Touratech's relationship with BMW is well known, but it was KTM who worked with them first when Touratech made the IMOs for their 640 Adventure. Now, of course, Touratech makes the metal panniers for BMW, KTM and Ducati, and have all sorts of associations across the adventure market. Most recently, Touratech have been working with Grant and Susan from Horizons Unlimited on a range of travel products. Touratech looked to be unstoppable as the big boy of the adventure market, with a massive €10 million expansion to the headquarters in Niedersachsen, Germany. That was until Friday the 11th of August, when the news broke that Touratech had filed for insolvency, and it seems that the new expansion was partly to blame. So what does this all mean? Well, firstly, Touratech have filed for insolvency, not bankruptcy, and there is a big difference. Insolvency basically means there's a lack of cash in the business, that it currently has more money going out than coming in, and it doesn't have the cash to pay its suppliers and lenders. As we understand it, in Germany, once a company has filed for insolvency, it basically goes into a holding pattern for 3 months. During these 3 months, it can continue to trade while putting its outgoing payments on hold, and during this time, an external administrator puts together a report for the German government, setting out various options for the business future. The result of this can vary from bankruptcy, restructuring, or even a buyout. It looks like Herbert Schwarz and Jochen Schanz, the Touratech MDs, are hoping for a restructuring option. But who knows? Maybe there could even be a buyout, but where from? And would the company's reputation survive? All too often, companies are sold and quickly become soulless shops, more interested in the bottom line than the customers. And after 25 years of building its reputation, that would be a great shame. So, how could this affect you, the customer? Well, right now it won't. Over the next 3 months, all distributors and the head office have made it clear that it will continue to be business as usual. But what happens in 3 months' time? Well, right now that is anyone's guess. Our hope is, of course, that everything will work out and Touratech will be able to go back to normal. But even a restructuring could have a few knock-on effects to the customer. Surely part of a restructure or buyout could involve looking at the distributor network around the world and potentially a re-evaluation of its large OEM contracts. Of course, the worst case scenario is that Touratech disappears completely leaving its 400 employees in Germany out of a job, distributors around the world without product to sell, BMW, KTM and Ducati scrambling to find a new metal pannier supplier, and maybe customers left out of pocket. However, this is extremely unlikely, and it would be extremely sad if it did. We approached Herbert and he gave the following statement.
Dear Touratech friends, I'm happy that I have the possibility here on Adventure Bike Television just to explain a little bit the situation of Touratech right now. Maybe you have heard or seen in my little video that we have since 2 weeks problems, financial problems, and we are just restructuring the whole company. But for the future we have a lot of new ideas, and I really would be happy if I can join, and I'm sure I will join Touratech for the next 10 years, like I did it the last 27 years. Maybe some of you remember that we started in 1990 with a little motorcycle computer, and from the years the market growth was starting with a very, very tiny little niche, and now it's a huge segment of the whole motorcycle industry, the adventure market, and I'm pretty sure that the niche growed with us, or we growed with the niche, doesn't matter, but now it's a big interesting motorcycle segment, and we have ideas and new products for the next at least 10 years, and I would love if you trust on Touratech for the next years, and of course buy our products, give us new inspiration for new products, and I will try my very best just to continue with Touratech, just to see Touratech ready for the future. Thank you.
We also asked for an interview with Nick Plum, MD of Touratech UK, and we had a reply from their marketing manager Sarah Ward stating that they don't feel they need to be interviewed at this time. We also asked from people in the adventure market for their thoughts and feelings.
Touratech. Where would the adventure market be without Touratech? We're the first company to produce any of the adventure products in any volume. And back in 2000, when we were looking to kit out our travel bikes, there were very few companies out there making the kit. The alley panniers, for example, there was a few small manufacturers and Touratech. So we ended up using Touratech and a few other Touratech bits, and they all did the job. They survived a year on the road, and now here we are at the Adventure Bike Shop selling Touratech products as well as a lot of other stuff, and it's all good. I think probably over the next few weeks we'll find that the financial issues with Touratech will all be solved. It's restructured and it carries on, and no one will notice any difference. We certainly haven't so far.
Hi, my name's Graham Field and I'm on the road in Albania heading to a place called Puke, which probably isn't pronounced like that. Anyway, Tom, the producer, has asked me, and a lot of other people, to comment about the situation with Touratech. Well, anybody who's read my books will know that I am very much into low budget travel. I certainly don't spend all my travel budget on all the must-haves that we think we need. So I'm not a huge fan of that. However, I do appreciate there are a lot of people who aren't in a position where they can take off for months on end and get an awful lot of satisfaction from going through the catalogues and turning their bikes into things of beauty, of like almost showroom examples of everything they could be, and there's a lot of pleasure to be gained from that. So that's fine, and then when they put it on eBay, I buy it and use it for what it's meant for. Anyway, I think to me, if this represents anything, it's that possibly the bubble has burst in the adventure bike world. It's been 10-year growth now, ever since those two significant people did that significant trip. There will always be people travelling, and there will be some people who do it on motorcycles. I think perhaps everybody who is into that scene has got all the accessories they need, and possibly we're seeing a decline in the fashion of adventure biking. Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing. There'll be something else. Let's see what it is.
Over the next few months, it will become clearer what Touratech's future will hold, and Adventure Bike TV hopes it is a positive future for the business, the 400 employees, the distributors around the world, and the adventure market as a whole. Okay, well, I hope that's laid out the facts a little bit more clearly, and we really wish Touratech Germany and all their global distributors the very best of luck. Now it's time for an advert break.
The Adventure Bike Shop, proud sponsors of Adventure Bike TV. Rubbish adverts.
Greater adventure.
The Adventure Bike Shop, proud sponsors of Adventure Bike TV. Rubbish adverts.
Greater adventure.
Welcome back. Now it's time for Under the Visor, and we're catching up with one of the top guys in the TRF. Don't ride here. Ride here. Explore new horizons with Moto Freight, proud sponsors of Under the Visor.
So I'm Mario. I am a director of the TRF, and we look after, we're the club for riding on unsurfaced roads throughout England and Wales. Well, a few years back, I was off on a round the world trip with the family, and I was in Cairns in Australia in a vehicle, in a van, and the kids were going jip jip jip, how many more miles, and the wife was going jip jip jip, how many more miles, and this guy rode up to me, English guy, in a BMW 1200 GS, and I had a look at that and thought, I'll have some of that. Got back from the trip, went along, got my ticket, joined the TRF, and the rest was history. Not at all. I mean, motorcycling for me was something that had always been at the back of my mind. You know, when I was younger, I wanted a bike, but parents said, well, they were almost on the verge, but then said, oh, a bit too dangerous, and that was it. So it never something that really came up, and instead I had cars, all sorts of cars, fast cars and four-wheel drives and all the rest of this stuff. Very much as a petrol head, but bikes is recent, 5 years or so. You know, I'm a businessman at the end of the day, and when you see something and you enjoy something a lot, whatever it is, golf or whatever, people have their passions, but you see that the infrastructure behind it is broken. As a businessman, you want to go and fix it. You want to do what you can to go off and fix it. And I simply took my years and years of corporate experience, working in corporate companies, building telecoms companies, which I do as a day job, and took that experience and put it into the TRF. Not in a corporate way, but in a very personable, hopefully, way. And it's paid off, and we're doing incredibly well at the moment. So the Trail Riders Fellowship has been going since 1970, We started off at in Tring in Hertfordshire, and we started off as an organisation that wanted to preserve roads that people have been using, unsurfaced roads, and get people riding on them. So we went out and cleared lanes and made sure that lost routes were preserved. Now it's grown into a large and very well respected rights of way organisation, and basically we're guardians of the roads in England and Wales, and we operate through a system of groups, 40 groups, who preserve the roads around their area, and we take trail riders out, people who want to ride off-road, and I use the word advisedly because they are roads. We take them out and show them how to ride, where to ride, and have a great time. Well, we have every group has a rights of way, rights of road officer who looks after the patch, deals with councils, and basically looks after the rights in that area. That's done at a local level. But a far bigger fight is on larger projects, on larger pieces of government legislation. We will use the money that we do from our membership revenue to fight court cases and actively lobby politics and politicians for our rights to ride. We had a very successful campaign a year ago, Right to Your MP. We actually got featured for the first time in Parliament, associated with a debate on green exercise, and now we're looking at going along, taking our argument to Countryfile Live, where we're going to be exhibiting this year, and also to the Gamekeepers Association, the Gamekeepers Fair. So we're going to be taking our discussion and any sort of prejudices that people have about us to the landowners and the great and good of this country. Well, a few years back, when starting with a marketing business head around me, I sat down with a bunch of guys and we actually broke down what the core benefits were to being in the TRF, that basically people couldn't get elsewhere. Because if you want to go off and ride a few lanes, no problem. You can look those up on the web, you can do a bit of research, you can pick up this information and get on with it. But with the TRF, you can go out, you can contact, you can ride with 5,000 people, you can find out where to ride, you can obviously look up around 3,000 miles of lanes easily on the web, but another 3,000 you get from the TRF. Places with access to simply more riding. And then all sorts of benefits, training, lots of benefits behind that, that easily outweigh its £45 a year fee. Well, where we're after is simply, our number one aim is conservation. It's keeping what we've got. Yeah, it's that simple. So the existing, and we do have, 6,000 miles of unsurfaced roads to ride on. If you compare that to motorways, there are about 2,000 miles of motorways, so there are plenty of unsealed roads to ride on. We want to conserve that. That's our number one aim. And how we're going to do that is addressing some of the issues that are driving forces against us. And this is antisocial riding, illegal riding. We must make our case clear that we have solutions to address that, and we'll be left alone. I mean, I don't get paid for what I do. It's purely voluntary, yeah? All the directors, and we have a great team of directors, they're 9 directors, we just do this for the fun and the love of it, okay? We enjoy trail riding. One of the things, and one of the attractions, is you get to meet some fantastic people, and that is probably the reason why I do it. And as long as that continues, and I come, like today, to amazing places I simply did not know existed in the Malvern Hills. Tomorrow I'm getting taken out by a local guy here who's going to show me all the best lanes. For me, that is reward enough.
Don't ride here. Ride here.
Explore new horizons with Moto Freight, proud sponsors of Under the Visor. Okay, now if you've got any interest whatsoever in riding your bike a little bit off the tarmac or a lot off the tarmac, take a look at the TRF website, and if you really want to go for it, join with them. They are a fabulous bunch of guys. I've been riding with them and you'll have an amazing time. Now it's time for the first part of a new series in the Travel Journal.
Good morning and welcome to Around on the Bike Base Camp. Again, I'm going on a short trip, and this day it will be around the Great Lakes of Sweden, and it's planned to take about 6 days. Might take 5 or 6 or 5, not 7. I have to be back at work. So I'm going to give you a quick run through of the luggage. So we have this one here, the waterproof, that's the tent and the sleeping bag and the mattress. So all I have to do when I'm camping is to just throw this one off the bike and I'm ready to set up, pitch the tent. Here we have some tools and rain cover and stuff like this. Here is all my clothes. Here is the tank bag where I've had the things that I need maybe to get to quickly, and this is the medic first aid and the face mask and camera equipment and a little bit toiletries and stuff like this. And this time I'm also trying out this, I have the map and I have notes to follow. So I don't know, I'm just going to give it a go. Here we have all the kitchen stuff, and of course the Camelback, the Christmas present for my wife, where I also have my laptop and some cables and stuff. Right, so let's see if we can get all this on the bike then. Okay, so we arrived here at VADSTENA castle, which is the first stop of this trip, and I'm going to show you a little bit around inside. So the castle was originally built at 1545, by a king called Gustav I. It consisted of 3 buildings here facing Lake of Vättern, and the idea was to, if not totally be able to defend, but at least deterrent aggressions from the south. The castle was actually built over a period of more than 100 years, and it wasn't always this high, so it was only like you can almost see there where the first level was, and then they extended it on the top. Nowadays the castle also hosts the provincial archives. This is actually a place where I've been getting a lot of information about the wrecks in the Västervik area where I live. All the way up to 1716, VADSTENA castle was actually the royal castle of Sweden, and then the royal family lost a little bit of interest, and they just left it. So for a while it was actually used as a barn or a storage for crops and stuff. Yeah. One of the really cool things with this place is that the moat running around the castle is used as a guest harbour. And when I was around 20, I used to have a sail yacht, skärgårdskryssare, 9.5 meters. And I came here and I was mooring up in this guest harbour. And actually I've seen the mooring spot where I was hanging. Good times indeed. Right, now I'm gonna go and have some breakfast. Obviously, I cannot ride through Motala without visiting the Motala Motor Museum. Over 125 motorcycles and mopeds are housed within these walls, so let's go and have a look. Right, so we arrived here at the monument, the memorial monument, and it's about 600 meters that direction. It's for Elsa Andersson, who was the first Swedish female pilot. She was the first female Swedish parachuter, and unfortunately also the first female Swedish person dying in an accident involving piloting and parachuting. So we're going to go down here and have a look at the monument. Right, so quite a hike that was. It's a bit uphill and a bit through the woods, as you saw. But now we're here, and this 3 meter tall obelisk was raised by the Swedish Royal Air Club, something yada yada, to the memory of Elsa Andersson, who was actually then Sveriges första AVIATRIX, which means like female aviator, Sweden's first. The 22nd of January 1922, Elsa Andersson was going to do an exhibition jump here at over the lake outside Askersund, and you can imagine there were thousands of people standing. This was 1922. There's an airplane, you know. Parachute, it's a girl, whoa! So there were thousands of people standing here watching the plane, and she came flying, and they could see her actually, you know, climbing out on the wing and throwing herself off the plane like you do. This was her third parachute jump ever, and it was an exhibition jump. Also, it was her last, so the parachute failed to develop, and she crashed on the cliffs here, and she died. And yeah, it's sad, but you know, living on the edge, huh? You know, I used to do skydiving. There was no chance that I would have been let into the exhibition group on my third jump ever. So yeah, well done, Elsa Andersson. But you know, yeah, didn't get much further than that. Right, so that was the flyer monument, the memorial of Elsa Andersson. We're gonna go back towards Askersund, where we just took off from, and then we're gonna go down on the west side of the Great Lake Vättern until we come to Karlsborg. Alright guys, we have arrived at this bridge house, like a covered bridge, as you can see here. And you can also see, quite possibly, the most disappointing road sign in the history of road signs. This is actually the only covered bridge in Sweden. Not only this is also the longest, it's also the tallest and the prettiest covered bridge in Sweden. Little creek running underneath. Aha! Information, if you're interested, you can pause now and you can read it. Oh, I wish you could smell this. Oh, it smells fantastic. I don't understand why I can't ride through this, honestly. This is solid woodwork, this. And we're through. And that's quite a cool picture of Blue Betty, isn't it? I haven't really made my mind up yet if I'm gonna ride through it or not. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. It's not worth it. Why should I really? People up there getting upset, starting to hate everyone on a motorbike. Nah, I'm gonna run over and take a picture though, because that looks good. Ta-da! Stuga. Right, so right now we're here at the cabin where I'm sleeping tonight and got a little bit of company. That's cool, isn't it? And Blue Betty sleeping here, and I'm sleeping in there. I forgot the key, but yeah, you know, it's nice. This is Mariestad, which is on Vänern, the biggest lake in Sweden. And I just rounded the north end of Vättern, which is the second largest. Wicked. On this little thing. All right. I guess that's gonna be it for tonight. Now I'm gonna watch some Carl Pilkington and then go to sleep. Yalla.
Earlier in the show, we talked about something that was probably a little bit more serious than sometimes we talk about on Adventure Bike TV. So I'm going to finish on a similar note. And before the naysayers start saying that we're sponsored by Touratech, let me just be 100% clear. We are saying this because we want them to succeed, because they're an important part of our industry. We're not sponsored by them. One of the great things about adventure bikers is we see them pulling together when things go wrong, and that's what we want to see. We don't want to see Touratech go down. You know, they're a great global brand. So that's what we want to see, the industry pulling together. We will see you next month.
The Adventure Bike Shop, proud sponsors of Adventure Bike TV. Rubbish adverts.
Greater adventure.